and the title of this session, are we ready for a new world order?
Are we ready for a new world order? Okay, nou hoe gaan dit gebeur? Hoe gaan hulle dit reg kry? Ek gaan julle wys, maar eers moet ek 'n vraag teregstel julle. My kind het so gelag en my geterg. Ek het op my vorige video gesê die LGBTQ++, maar dit is eintlik die LGBTQ. Maar dit maak nog nie die plasse minder nie, nê. Wel, toe lag ek nou maar net saam met hom en ek sê vir hom, gelukkig weet my kykers waarvan ek praat, want julle doen mos. Was dieselfde pap, net 'n ander sous. Okay, maar anyway, terug na die New World Order.
I think you need a new world order that China has to be part of the process of creating it, and they have to buy in, they have to own it the same way as, let's say, the United States owns the Washington Consensus, the current order.
And what about the American concern that aiding and abetting this move away from the dollar as the world's reserve currency ultimately means a weakening of the U.S. economy?
It is not necessarily in our interest to have the dollar as the sole world currency, because as the world economy grows, it needs additional currency. And if the dollar is that additional currency, it means that the U.S. has to have a chronic current account deficit, and that is not appropriate. So I think it's in our interest as well to reform the system. I think this is a healthy, if painful, adjustment that the world has to go through. But the system we have now has actually broken down, only we haven't quite recognized it. And so you need to create a new one. And this is the time to do it.
The world has to overcome not only the damage done to our economies and our societies by COVID-19, it also has to confront the repercussions of a dangerous clash between major global powers. History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected. In times of crisis, the role of governments is more important and more relevant than ever.
Out of everything terrible, something good will come if you look hard enough for it. I think this presents us with some significant opportunities to make some real changes. You know, we are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there. And we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
As we tackle this crisis, our efforts cannot be a series of independent initiatives running in parallel. The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution based on radically transforming our current fossil fuel-based economy to one that is genuinely renewable and sustainable. So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector. With trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders, it offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system. I was very privileged. My father was an advisor to Nixon when they came off the gold standard in '71, and so I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
Nou so, in 1973 julle, die 6de Oktober, dit was die heiligste, maar die heiligste dag vir die Jode. Toe het Egipte en Syrië 'n massiewe surprise attack op Israel uitgevoer. En Israel was outnumbered, maar hulle het nogtans die oorhand gekry, prys die Here. Maar toe wou die Arabiese nasie al die lande wat Israel gesupport het, straf deur sanksies op hulle olie te sit, met die gevolg, die prys in olie het met 300% gestyg. So moes die US toe nou vinnig plan maak om weer die ekonomie te stabiliseer en het hulle vriendskapbande met Saudi-Arabië herstel. US het met hulle 'n deal gemaak om hulle sekuriteit te bied en meer wapens aan hulle te verkoop. Voorwaarde dat hulle weer kan olie trade en dat dit altyd net teen die dollar sal geskied. En al die ander lande moes ook dan olie koop in dollar. Nou so was daar tot nou die dag toe nou nog 80% van die lande wat in dollar getrade het, daarom dat die US dollar die afgelope plus minus 50 jaar stabiel en sterk was en dit die US die groot mag en voordeel gegee het. Maar dit is nou besig om te verander julle. US se finansiële sekuriteit is besig om te disappear. En een ou is verantwoordelik vir dit alles. Daar is 7 countries in die wêreld wat absoluut moerakies is. Waar daar geen demokrasie is nie, geen stemmery, voting met ander woorde is nie, waar die hele country beheer en regeer word deur 'n royal family. En Saudi-Arabië is een van hulle, the House of Saud. En hulle is die rykste in die hele wêreld. En Mohammed bin Salam al-Saud is die gekroonde prins van Saudi-Arabië. Nou alhoewel hy nog nie die koning is nie, regeer hy en hy hoef niemand permissie te vra oor besluite ensovoorts nie. En wat dit baie belangrik maak, is die feit dat hy die geldstelsel beheer en natuurlik ook die olie. Hy besluit hoe met sy olie gedeel word en teen watter prys, en dit kan sy verhouding met ander lande beïnvloed en dit kan lei tot 'n totale ineenstorting van die US dollar. Want China is tans die tweede grootste olieverbruiker op ons planeet aarde, maar hulle moes ook olie teen dollar aangekoop het. En dit werk nou net nie meer vir China nie, omdat die US hulle grootste mededingers is. en deur olie aan te koop teen US dollar, dit gee Amerika mos nou meer mag. Maar nou is dit besig om te verander, omdat Saudi-Arabië oorweeg julle om olie aan China te verkoop teen Yang. Weet julle wat gaan dit beteken? Nou julle, daar's net een ding wat die US dollar power gee, en dit is olie. Olie is geheel en al super belangrik reg oor die hele wêreld, maar daar is 'n geweldige change besig om plaas te vind, en dit het te doen met die wêreld se 3 grootste leiers. Julle, en dit word gebore uit die ineenstorting en die dood van die US dollar. In die verlede het die US dollar sy krag, sy waarde gehad deur goud. En goud het die dollar geback-up, met ander woorde. Maar in 1971 het president Richard Nixon die US dollar van die goud afgehaal. Nou daar was baie spekulasie oor hoekom hy dit gedoen het. En meeste mense het gesê dat die US nie meer genoeg goud gehad het nie. Maar 2 jaar later het die dollar weer gelink met die olie. Nou laat ek julle net gou wys hoe dit gebeur het. Dit is baie belangrik dat julle hierdie verstaan. War is used for transformation. Onthou dit. Nou julle, hierdie is nou baie interessant. Bly nou net by my, né? In 1929 het 'n Italiaanse diktator, Mussolini, meer as $90 miljoen aan die Romeinse Katolieke Kerk geskenk. Maar dit het toe nou uitgekom dat dit nooit 'n liefdadigheidsdonasie was nie, maar wel 'n bribe. Hoorie, hoekom wys ek nou hierdie vir julle? Om julle te verveel? Nee, hierdie is baie belangrik, want dit is om julle te wys hoe werk alles saam. Al die elite is kop in een mis, en hulle het een doel voor oë. En dit is om die wêreld te transformeer, soos wat hulle dit soek, soos wat hulle dit wil hê. Nou onthou, in Daniel 2 vers 20 en 21 sê hy, dat God stel konings aan en stel konings af. Nou sonder dat hulle dit besef, speel hulle direk volgens God se plan en sy raamwerk. Joe Biden, julle is nie in beheer nie. Bill Gates is nie in beheer nie. Klaus Schwab is ook nie in beheer nie. Saudi-Arabië of China is nie in beheer nie. Luister julle, die Romeinse Katolieke Kerk is nie in beheer nie, maar God is in beheer. Glory to God. Okay, nou hierdie bribe was sodat die Pope sy plaaslike erkenning sou gee aan die Mussolini vir die Italiaanse fasistiese regime en om die ondersteuning van die katholieke gemeenskap te hê. En saam met hierdie geld, hierdie bribe, né, het Mussolini ook vir hulle 'n stuk grond van 44 hektaar gegee vir sekuriteit en onafhanklikheid van die kerk. So, nou met so baie geld, het die Romeinse Katolieke Kerk nou vir hulle 'n geheime bank gestig. En waarvan net hulle natuurlik moes weet. En deur die dekades was hierdie bank die middelpunt van skandale en beskuldigings van geldverduistering en bedrog. Nou hierdie bank het bekend gestaan as die IOR, julle. En die bank moes soewerein wees sonder enige bande of aandele met ander banke, 'n onafhanklike bank heel op sy eie en net sekere van die elite was binne in hierdie bank toegelaat en die bank word absoluut net deur die Pope bestuur en beheer. En in 2013 het hulle vir die heel eerste keer 'n jaarlikse, na amper 100 jaar, 'n rapport geplaas, 'n jaarlikse rapport. Natuurlik het dit wenkbroue laat lig en vrae gevra en spekulasies is gemaak. Want julle, volgens 'n reporting by the NPR, het hulle gesê die bank is gestig gedurende die Tweede Wêreldoorlog om die kerk se dealing with the Nazis weg te steek vir die US en die UK, en dat hulle ook voordeel getrek het gedurende die Holocaust. Want blykbaar het hulle lewensversekerings gehad op Jode wat gesterf het gedurende daardie tyd. En hulle het geweier om die polisse van die afgesterwe Jode aan die eggenote en die kinders uit te betaal. Omdat hulle doodsertifikate vereis het, wat natuurlik heeltemal onmoontlik was in daardie tyd, onder daardie omstandighede. So julle, die bank het al die polisgelde gehou, gesteel met ander woorde. En in 1970 het die FBI na 'n 18 maande lange ondersoek vasgestel en bevind dat die New York mob was van plan om vervalste korporatiewe effekte en voorraadsertifikate aan die IOR bank te verkoop vir $900 miljoen, om sodoende te gebruik vir kollaterale finansiering te bekom. Maar nietemin, om hierdie lang geskiedenis nou kort te maak, kom dit daarop neer. Die bank was gebruik vir baie skelmgheid en bedrog, so dit was nie so groot geheim dat baie van die Italiaanse elite die bank gebruik het nie. Dit is net 'n druppel in die emmer wat ek aan julle genoem het van die geheime IOR bank, die Roomse Katholieke Kerk se eie bank. Kyk gou hier.
One that most of the world doesn't even know exists, called God's Bankers. It's owned and run solely by the Vatican. The bank is controlled by a handful of Catholic leaders who answer only to the Pope himself, and it could be the most secret bank on earth, but also possibly the most controversial, and has been tied to the CIA, the Mafia, and even Hitler. For almost 8 years, the Vatican Bank has remained mostly completely unchanged. That is, until very recently. Moneyval is the council of Europe's anti-money laundering commission, and in 2012 it published a report suggesting the IOR is one of the world's leading laundries for dirty cash under Pope Francis, stating the bank was seriously deficient in its transparency and was lacking in measures designed to fight the financing of terrorism. Also in 2012, investment bank JP Morgan shut down the bank account of the Vatican Bank in the US, cutting ties with the Vatican Bank after a 35-year working relationship. Apparently, this was because JP Morgan was suspicious the IOR's account was being used for money laundering. Also, that the Vatican was refusing to be transparent about transactions. This should say a lot about how shifty the church's bank was acting for JP Morgan to take this kind of action, especially considering JP Morgan is the bank that was fined $2.5 billion for not reporting the shady dealings of Bernie Madoff and kept a relationship with this guy because he was apparently valuable to the bank. In 2013, a Vatican priest was arrested trying to smuggle 20 million euros out of Switzerland in a private plane, along with the help of a Secret Service agent who would have immunity from declaring the cash at the border. According to reports, the priest was using the church to launder money for the Sicilian mafia, and also apparently had a very known history of flaunting money, and was nicknamed Monsignor Cinquecento, a name given to him because of his habit of carrying around 500 euro bills. For the last decade, Pope Francis has promised to reform the way the IOR does business, working with authorities to make the IOR more transparent and to comply with international money laundering requirements. However, things have been moving very slowly indeed. After a decade, Moneyval has announced that only now will the IOR be subject to regular checks, and has said the bank is becoming more compliant to international standards, with its latest report being generally positive, saying the church now seems to understand risks. However, it says there are still red flags where the church's bank could be abused, mostly where senior church or bank insiders could use the system for personal gains. But the Pope has said that in the future, the church is promising clean finances, and recently has ordered all departments of the church to move any movable assets back to the Vatican, so that they'll come under the direct control of the IOR, a move that's designed to give the papacy more oversight, but that also has been suggested will give the church even more more centralized control over its assets. And when it comes to real estate, the church might still not be in the clear just yet there either, as just this year, one of the high-end London properties was the centerpiece of a massive corruption scandal. But on the surface at least, it does seem like the Catholic Church is committing to turn a new page, with Pope Francis stating he wants to create a poor church for the poor, which seems to be a prophecy that's already coming true, as since becoming more transparent and open, the IOR's profits have been on a serious decline.
So, hoeveel van julle het geweet van hierdie bank? Nee? En geld gee dan wat? Geld gee, mag en invloed, nee? Onthou hierdie wat ek nou vir julle gewys het. In die volgende deel gaan ek bietjie dieper in die katholieke storie ingaan. En vir julle baie meer goed wys. Wat katholiek beteken, ek gaan dit vir julle vertel in die volgende video. So baie dit net nie in jou kies, moet dit nie vergeet nie, moet dit nie verloor nie. Ok, so kom ons kyk dan nou bietjie verder. Wat is hulle plan en hoe beplan hulle om hierdie hele storie by mekaar te sit en reg te kry?
If I told you I wanted to give you free money for the rest of your life, what would you say? For almost everyone watching this video, I'm sure the answer would be yes. So you might be happy to know that very soon, almost all of us might be getting a free payment from our government each month. A payment that may allow us to never work again, or maybe just not struggle as hard to make ends meet. But most people never consider the impact giving away all this free money will have on our planet.
Maar julle, hier is die ding. Niks in hierdie wêreld is for free nie. Daar's 'n prys om te betaal.
During our history so far, humanity has gone through 3 industrial revolutions. These were the times where technology advanced in a certain way that completely changed the way we did things around the world. One example is when we mastered steam power, and that was used for machinery and in transport. Another is when we could more easily create massive amounts of energy via things like gas, coal, electricity. Basically, you can think of these revolutions as points in history where humanity took a huge step up in terms of technology and our capabilities as a species. But what you might not realize is that a few key figures on the world stage are predicting we're at the entry point to the next massive step in human evolution.
Nou die volgende word genoem the 4th Industrial Evolution deur Klaus Schwab, wat natuurlik die founder of the World Economic Forum is. En hy het groot planne vir ons julle, boy.
Simply put, the 4th Industrial Revolution will be all about data, automation, and the interconnectivity of the human race. It talks about things in our lives becoming more interconnected, where all our devices constantly share information between themselves. It theorizes a huge amount of robotics making its way into our society, where machines will take over a lot of the jobs once done by us, fleshy meatbags. And it even predicts the rise of artificial intelligence, where computer systems may start making many of the decisions for us, instead of us being the masters of our own fate.
Nee, nou, dit klink nou soos 'n stuk van Hollywoodse werk, nee. Maar julle, ons hoef nie eens ver te soek om te sien dat hierdie dinge alreeds in ons wêreld gebeur nie.
Supermarkets and other stores are increasingly becoming automated, with self-checkout booths becoming normal all around the world. In countries like Estonia, robots are already replacing delivery drivers for online food orders. Within a decade, most of our taxis, trucks, and even airliners will be piloted by automated systems that can do the job safer than any human ever could. And in only a couple of years, you'll be able to buy your very own service robot from Tesla that will help you do the chores around the house.
Okay, nou, dit klink mos nou goed, dit klink lekker. Ons gaan dan veiliger wees, ons gaan gemakliker lewe. Wie sal nie daarvan hou nie? Maar nou hier kom die catch julle, en hier kom George Soros se woorde waar. Ons, human race, gaan absoluut useless wees vir die wêreld. Die wêreldekonomie gaan ons nie nodig hê nie.
As more and more of our jobs are automated over time, more and more people will be made redundant. According to statistics, around 800 million people, or 20% of the workforce, will be made obsolete in the next 8 years. By 2050, less than 30 years from now, it's estimated that half of all jobs currently done by humans will no longer exist. If that happens, it would mean up to 4 billion people will be left completely unemployed with no way to feed themselves. Some new jobs will be created, of course, in new industries that will emerge in the near future, but according to data, jobs will be destroyed at a much faster rate.
Okay, so, niemand gaan werk hê nie. Hoe gaan ons dan aan die lewe bly? Kos koop, of ons huise betaal ensovoorts. Dit is scary, maar gelukkig het die wêreld se rykes en mees invloedryke experts vir ons 'n grand oplossing. After all, dit is mos nou hulle groot briljante idee van hoe die wêreld moet wees, né? En die oplossing is dan
Universal Basic Income. UBI would be a guaranteed minimum income that every adult citizen would receive. You, I, and every other working age person in your country would get a regular payment from our government similar to receiving a welfare check. It would be enough to cover your most basic living expenses like rent, food and electricity. For example, maybe it's €1,000 per month in Germany, which isn't a lot of money in that country, but just enough to live on. And this easy monthly payment would come directly from our government with no strings attached.
Rarig? Nou, wat basies moet gebeur voordat hierdie hele wêreld 'n totale ekonomiese ineenstorting kry is. Jy sal elke maand 'n vasgestelde toelaag ontvang, genoeg om jou basiese uitgawes te dek, en in hakies vir die eyeblind om mense net te paai, want dit is nie hoe dit werklik gaan gebeur nie, dis 'n leuen, maar hulle sê, jy mag tog 'n sideline werk hê, vir 'n ekstra inkomste. Nou die plan is dan, dat almal dieselfde toelaag ontvang, genoeg om van te lewe, en dit is nou waar die, ek besit niks, maar ek is so happy, ding inkom, want julle, dit klink lekker en aanloklik, nee, meeste mense sal dan nie kan wag vir hierdie stelsel nie, en die meeste van almal, ouens soos hierdie.
People like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and even Pope Francis of the Catholic Church are all supporters of universal basic income. And of course, so is the World Economic Forum leader, Klaus Schwab. In certain places around the world, there have already been some successful trials of UBI in places like Finland, Japan, and Kenya, trials that included thousands of people receiving a minimum monthly payment. Those who took part in the trial said that they felt generally less stressed and happier overall, as the monthly UBI payments took away their worries of meeting their basic.
So ja, wat meer wil jy hê? Geen bekommernis, geen stres, jy hoef nie te werk nie, en jy ontvang elke maand 'n toelaag om van te lewe, wat deur die wêreld se rykste mense en firmas geskenk word en aan jou uitbetaal word deur die staat. Maar julle, daar's een donker verskeie agenda, wat hulle nie aan die mense bekend maak nie. Nou, wat sal dit wees? Die geheim van die UBI.
World Economic Forum, the same WEF that is run by this guy who is a huge supporter of UBI. The article is titled, Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. And it is written from the point of view of someone living in the futuristic global society, a society that the WEF thinks should exist less than a decade from now. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy, nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere, everything I do, think, and dream of is being recorded. I just hope nobody will use it against me. A world where we are all living in a centralized, heavily controlled society where everything we do is logged, tracked, and recorded. A planet where we can't go anywhere or do anything or mix with the people that we want to be mixing with without the permission of our government. The very same government that will also be in control of giving us the free money we'll need to survive.
Nou so, sien julle dit? Alles kom neer op een ding.
In Australia, some people on welfare have to use cashless debit cards, which only allows them to spend their monthly welfare payments on certain items the government allows them to buy. In China, citizens can already lose their rights to buy plane and train tickets, get access to bank loans, and even have their passports cancelled just for saying negative things about the government. And only a couple of days ago, the Canadian government began freezing the bank accounts of protesters who they deemed to be a nuisance.
Okay, en onthou julle wat ek gesê het? War is used for transformation. Waaroor dink julle gaan die Russia en Ukraine oorlog? Hulle, die elite van die wêreld, sal hulle doel bereik ten koste van mense se lewens. Ons is niks in hulle oë nie. Mense se lewens is vir hulle van geen belang of waarde nie. Besef julle dit? Nou hoe gaan hulle dit regkry om ons te kan kontrol? Deur 'n digital currency money stelsel, wat reeds in China afgedwing is op die mense en wat 'n global systeem gaan word. Maar daar moet eers chaos veroorsaak word om orde te skep. Okay? Petrol, kos, alles raak ontsaglik duur as gevolg van die Russia en Ukraine ding. Nou dit beïnvloed die hele wêreld en skielik het die hele wêreld ook 'n energy crisis, julle. Die krag gaan stop. Wat dink julle gaan uitbreek wanneer die krag stop? Veral hier in Suid-Afrika. Chaos. En dan kan hulle die orde skep wat hulle soek. Finish en klaar.
After they learned that you could still infect me, the vaccine passports were still in place. But they've told us, they meaning people in power, have told us what they want to do next. So the UK is currently the head of the G7 group. That's the world's most economically advanced countries. And the UK currently chairs the G7 group. Our Chancellor, who does our economy, called Chancellor of the Exchequer, his name's Rishi Sunak. He put out this video saying that what they want to do is bring in this thing called the central banking digital currency. They want to replace fiat paper money with digital money as a competitor to Bitcoin and crypto money, right? But instead of being decentralized currency, it will be controlled by a government. It's digital currency, but controlled centrally through the banks, Bank of England. So instead of having a bank account with whatever, HSBC or Bank of America, you'll have a bank account directly with, in the American context, with the Fed. In the UK, directly with the Bank of England. You have a personal bank account, and you're given digital money in that bank account. These are called central banking digital currencies. The Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK has already announced their intention to do this as the G7 group. And these, if you look up...
this sounds terrifying.
If you look up, there's a specific article in the Telegraph, programmable digital currency, yeah?
Central bank digital currency, is that the one down below?
Digital currency should be programmable. See that one there? Yeah? But you can see the word there, right? Programming in the headline. Now, what they're doing is they're saying that this digital currency, once you're, because, you know, everyone knows that with inflation at over 5%, it's now 5.4%, right? Our fiat money, the paper money, is increasingly becoming worthless, and we're headed towards a big disaster. The Fed wants to raise interest rates. But we're in so much debt that if you raise interest rates, people are going to suffer because everyone, we're living on debt as Western economies. So they realize that this kind of the lifespan of paper money is fast coming to an end because of the 2008 economic crash in particular. So they're bringing in these central banking digital currencies. Why is that word programmable in there? So what they said in that article, and the Chancellor put a video out saying this as well, they said, right, think back to what vaccine passports were, yeah? If you don't have your jab, you can't even eat in this restaurant. What they've said, and why the word programmable was in that headline, was they've said that this money that you will earn from work, instead of having paper money, you have this digital money. It's programmable so that you can't buy certain foods, or if you do something that your employer doesn't like, it's all in that article. You won't be able to spend your money. In other words, it's not money. They're vouchers. They're like food vouchers. And they can be programmed so that, like the Chinese social credit system, that if you try and use them on a certain thing, it won't work. You say you want to buy a burger and they want you to buy bugs, which is one of the examples used. If you start to try and buy unhealthy meat, it just won't work. You tap your card, you can't buy the thing because you've met your quota that month of burgers. You have to buy something like a vegan meal.
So it won't just be money in the sense of the way we have dollars or pounds today.
Yeah.
It'll be something that's controlled in terms of your ability to distribute it.
Which is why I'm calling it a voucher. It's a coupon.
But even a coupon, if you have a coupon to buy bread, you can still buy the bread.
Yeah.
Like There's
But you can't buy, see that coupon to buy bread, what you can't do is buy a burger with that coupon. It's for bread.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you will have this central banking digital currency. And then what they're talking about in that article that we just pulled up is they'll say, right, and it explicitly uses the words, won't be used on something that the employer deems inappropriate or the state deems inappropriate.
Oh, we got to see this.
Yeah?
See if we can find that, or
I'm just digging through a different article about it too. It's talking about there's pilot programs going to be used in the Olympics coming up in China.
Yep.
They've already started it, and
right now,
do you feel like you're sounding the alarm?
Yes.
For people that don't understand what the fuck is going on.
So here, I've pulled it up for you here. Yeah. So there's the video.
Yeah.
I don't know if your camera can see that, but
no.
There's the video. There's him speaking about it.
The G7 is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK. And governments and central banks across the world are working together, looking into what having a digital currency might mean in practice.
Right, so that's the guy who runs our economy in the UK. His name's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And here is the article. Bank of England tells ministers to intervene on digital currency programming. Yeah, and here's a quote from the article. This is in the Telegraph, the one he pulled up, but it was behind a paywall, so I'll just read the quote. Digital cash could be programmed to ensure it is only spent on essentials or goods which an employer or government deems to be sensible.
Holy shit.
I'm going to take it one step further for you, Joe, right? So the vaccine passport infrastructure is in place. But now we know that the vaccine doesn't stop infection or transmission, but the checkpoint Charlie exists everywhere. They bring in digital banking, central banking digital currencies. You've got a scenario now that you're checking in and out everywhere you go using vouchers that are programmed, and you can only spend where you're told you can spend them. There's another word for that, man. That's called the Chinese social credit system. That's what it's called. And anyone who watches Black Mirror will know what I'm talking about. That's that TV show, right?
Yeah.
So what they are telling us, and when I say they, who's they? People in power. That's the head of our economy, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, second most powerful person other than the Prime Minister and maybe the Foreign Secretary in the UK, right? He's telling us, I just played it there for you, he's telling us that's what he, as the UK, the head of the G7, want to bring in for the G7. So a scenario where, like in New York at the moment, because the passport infrastructure is in place, you bring in that digital currency and you've got this total control. And if I'm speaking to you the way I'm speaking now, and my employer or government, you heard that in the quote directly, yeah, deems me as saying or doing something inappropriate, suddenly I can't actually pay to come here and speak to you anymore. My digital currency won't even pay for the ticket because it will be known that I'm coming to speak to you. Sorry, your vouchers don't allow you to purchase that ticket to go and speak to Joe.
And this is where we get into the kind of censorship that we see in social media that is not, it's not, you can't have that kind of censorship with the First Amendment in normal discourse. But you can have that kind of censorship if you've developed a digital platform that distributes information, but it's a private company.
Yeah.
So think about what money is, where you can spend it on whatever you want, versus this digital currency, which is essentially controlled in a sense.
Yeah.
Like you have free speech on Twitter, but you really don't.
Yeah.
Because if you go too far or you talk about something that they don't find appropriate, they'll just ban your account. That could be what we're looking at in terms of what we think of as free speech being social media platforms. Could be what we think of as your free range ability to buy whatever you want with whatever money that you've earned.
What's going on here is with this central banking digital currency, if you get to that situation where you end up with the Chinese social credit system in the West, why would anyone want to do that, right? I believe we're in a moment of the Gutenberg press. Go back to when the printing press was invented. Technology disrupts power structures. It always has. Printing and its invention was a new technology. What happened when they invented the printing press? The power structures who up until that point were reading the Bible for you and were telling you that you've got to pay this priest X amount of favors and he'll forgive you your sins. And that became a bribery system, right? Which is what Martin Luther was so upset about when he pinned his thesis to the wall. The printing press disrupted that power dynamic because people could read the Bible for themselves. And they began realizing that the power structures were manipulating what was written to control people. Now, nobody in hindsight is going to argue that printing and its invention is a bad thing for humanity. But at the time, it led to war. It led to the 30 Years' War in Europe. What's today's Gutenberg press? The internet. Now, what's happening is that the invention of the internet, with the decentralization of information, and in particular here, the decentralization of currency in the form of cryptocurrencies, is disrupting those power hierarchies to have the infrastructure in place that you can have a checkpoint Charlie society, so that when the central banking digital currencies are in place, that infrastructure is already there because people were so scared they voluntarily allowed you to put that in place, so that you can maintain your grip on power, because what's coming around the corner is the decentralization of everything, of media, therefore of narrative, and of course remember, whoever defines the truth gets to define reality. Decentralization of narratives, decentralization of the economy through crypto. You no longer have the power to define the story and control the money supply. So the powers that be, who are losing that power, need to clamp down. They're clamping down on their own children, because we are people who are born of the West. So it's an internal civil war in a hybrid war context over truth and over information. Centralization versus decentralization, basically. It's no longer about left or right. It's about up versus down. It's about power versus those who don't have power.
Right.
See how easy it was to convince everybody initially that the Iraq war was needed, right? Now you've got a point today where they haven't been able to convince people of their measures that they wanted to bring in when COVID struck, because it was quicker to be able to unpick that narrative due to decentralization. Shows like this that weren't under the traditional yoke of traditional media were able to have certain conversations. Now that means that it's harder to control the narrative. And so in a situation like that, when you're losing your grip and power, the only option you have left is to clamp down. There's going to be some short-term pain.
And what do you mean by that?
There'll be another emergency, whether it's war with Russia, which is already being played up, whatever it is, whether it's the crash of the economy because of the fiat and the inflation at 5.4%, at least in the UK, it's 5.4% here. I know it's out of control here as well. If the currency collapses, because we're living on printed money at the moment, it's called quantitative easing. We are literally printing ourselves money to try and pay for our debt. We're just printing more money. That's unsustainable. So we're in this situation where any other crisis could occur. If the food shortages everywhere and people end up rioting, it's a good reason to say, right, we need more power to control this. We need more emergency powers. We need stronger laws. And so you end up in a situation where crises can be manipulated to bring in stronger and stronger authority, when really what's going on is we're in this crossroads in history.
Right, so, as daar dan nou mense is wat nou nie rarig veel bekommerd is nie, want ons is daarom hier in Suid-Afrika, dit gebeur nie hier nie, dit gebeur ons nou maar net daar ver. Weet in US en in China en Russia en Ukraine en al die plekke. Dink asseblief weer daaroor, want ons is reeds in die stelsel. Hoe doen julle bankbesigheid? Hoe betaal julle skuld? En onthou wat ek vir julle gesê het. War is used for transformation. En dit is waarop ons afstuur. En natuurlijk weet ek, dit is nie almal wat daarin glo nie, wat in die wegraping glo nie, maar dit is nie vir my 'n ding om oor te debatteer nie. Ek glo wat in die woord van die Here staan en my gunstelingsskrif natuurlik is. Lukas 21 vers 34, maar pas op vir julself, dat julle harte nie miskien beswaar word deur swelgery en dronkenskap en sorge van die lewe nie, en die dag julle nie skielik oorval nie. Want soos 'n stryk sal hy kom oor almal wat op hierdie aarde woon. Vers 36, maar waak dan en bid altyd deur, sodat julle waardig geag mag word om al hierdie dinge wat kom te ontvlug en voor die seun van die mens te staan. Amen. Prys die Here. Okay, nou sê hierdie video is nou al reeds te lank. Ek moes al gestop het, maar julle het nog daai katolieke in die kies, want in die volgende deel gaan ek julle baie meer wys omtrent dit. Amen. Nou ja, julle weet jy aan die einde is mos daai like, as jy gelike het, subscribe as jy nog nie het nie, en share gerus, want baie mense weet nie wat is in die wêreld besig om aan te gaan nie. Julle en ons is in die laaste van die laaste dae van die kerk. Amen. Nou ja, mag julle geseënd wees en ek het vir julle so 'n stukkie bonus hierby gesit. Glory to God.